Amen. I was living in State College for a while, and I was coaching basketball. I've coached basketball different times in my life, and I was coaching these young boys. I think they were, I can't remember exactly, my nephew was one of them, maybe 6th grade or 7th grade or whatever. And we got there, and one of the first things we did is just kind of, a little conditioning for the boys to get used to running. Now, they don't need to do too much conditioning at that age, but ran a little bit. I remember the first thing I said to them, I remember like 6th graders, 7th graders, first thing I said, okay, we're gonna learn how to dribble. And one little boy goes, kind of shook his head like that and walked away, and I said, what's wrong? He said, Coach, we already know how to dribble. I'm thinking, you're just in 6th grade, and you already know how to dribble, right? And so it was a long season with with those boys. But so today's message is the 9th rule in Jordan Peterson's book, and that is this: assume the person you're listening to might know something that you don't. So to me, I kind of just made it simpler for me, and I've entitled this, Be Coachable. Be Coachable. Being coachable means that you're open to being taught in order to improve. Simply put, right? That's pretty easy. You understand that you're not perfect, that you don't know everything, that you have room to grow. Another aspect of it would be to show appreciation to the person, the coach, the teacher, whatever, for taking the time to teach you, to give active feedback, and things like this. Michael Jordan said this one time. He said, my best skill was that I was coachable. I was a sponge and aggressive to learn. Michael Jordan, he said that was his best skill. Athletes who fail to be coachable often will get to a place where they'll just plateau. If you ever coached, you understand that, right? If you think that you know everything, you're going to get to a place where you just can't grow anymore. And taking a negative view of learning like that you know everything, it's going to kind of stagnate you. So there are a few traits, before I kind of get into the message, of someone who is coachable, someone who is teachable. This really isn't in your notes or anything, but one of the biggest things I think is, and it's hard for us, that is check your ego at the door. So I was golfing this past week, and I was golfing with my friend Rick. And Rick will tell you, he's not a great golfer or whatever, but we were on the one tee, and I was having trouble with my drive. He said, do you mind if he goes, I know I'm not a good golfer or anything, but you mind if I tell you something? I go, absolutely not. If it's going to help me, I want to know. You know what I mean? Kind of told me what he saw, and I go, okay, I'll think about that. And Tim told me something else that I was doing, right? And that ability to, and I don't always have that, right? But that ability to take that kind of criticism and feedback and be able to use that. So check your ego. A lot of times you think, I could have said, you shoot up over 100. What do you have to teach me, right? That's just ego. Next thing would be, I always felt this way when I was coaching kids. And I think it's very, very important. It has to do with active listening. Is look at the person that's teaching you, that's talking to you. Like, look them in the eye. I tell the boys that. Don't look at the ground or don't look around. Like, look at your coach. Look at me when I'm talking to you, so I know that you're at least paying attention to me, that you're hearing. Be humble. Be open-minded. Be willing to implement what the coach is telling you. Even actively seek feedback from mentors, from coaches, from teachers. Also be a source of encouragement to your teammates. Demonstrate a commitment to the team and to the game. Just a few things there. Now, I say all this to say there's one trait I think that we use to describe a person who is teachable, who is coachable. And that word would be humility. Humility. So I want to talk today about the power of humility, about embracing the wisdom of others. And so how do we best do this? So I want to have 3 points, some sub-points underneath there, and it shouldn't take us long to get through this. But the first thing is this. This is the first step in being able to be coachable, being able to be teachable. And that's this: to recognize the limitations of your own knowledge. So like just one simple example. I have a friend, he's sitting right over here, Jamie Petrick. He's a neuropsychologist, very, very learned, very educated, knows, just full of knowledge. Well, I do a lot of reading when it comes to the brain and so forth, and so I have some talks with him, and he listens to me as if I have something to teach him. I have nothing to teach Jamie when it comes to this, but he listens as though I do. Do you follow me? So you could take the approach like in golf with Rick talking to me or me talking to Jamie. You could take the approach that, who do you think you are telling me? That's this whole idea of whoever you're talking to, assume that they might have something, one thing, that may be of value to you. But to do that, you have to recognize your own limitations of your knowledge. You have to know that I do not know everything when it comes to this subject matter. So acknowledge that no one possesses complete knowledge. Socrates said this. He said, I know that I am intelligent because I know that I know nothing. So he has to take that approach first. That's how he knows he's smart. Do you follow me? Because he assumes that there's so much out there more to learn. That's how he knows he's intelligent. I don't know anything. The statement reflects his acknowledgement of his own kind of ignorance and understanding that wisdom comes from recognizing the extent of one's own knowledge gaps. Isn't that a hard thing, right? Isn't that difficult? It's kind of like when you're driving down the road and there's somebody's coming beside you, there's a period where there's a gap between where you can see that car in your side mirror. Isn't that true? There's a gap there. When they're in that gap, it's uncertain, it's difficult. It's the same thing with these things in our life. There are gaps of our knowledge. The trouble is this, I say it all the time, and you know this is true. We don't know what we don't know. And that's a hard thing. And luckily, we live a period of our life through our teenage years where we know everything. And then you get to the place after that where you kind of don't. But don't you wish we could all go back to that time when there's nothing that you didn't know? So Socrates encouraged individuals to engage in kind of three things, and I often talk about this, is self-reflection. The only way you're gonna come to a place of understanding of these types of things is to stop and pay attention to yourself and reflect, right? And be honest with yourself, so self-reflection. The second thing would be questioning. And so that's a difficult thing because what you think you know it to be true. So why do you question something that's true? Isn't that right? You kind of just don't do that. But to learn how to critically think is to have a conversation with yourself, kind of the Socratic method, right? And so you question yourself on your beliefs. Oftentimes when I'm speaking with somebody, especially when it comes to, really anything maybe, but especially when it comes to faith or religion or doctrine, and somebody will take a hard line on something. You follow me? And what I often do is often challenge the depth of their belief on that idea, that doctrine, that position. Now I may also at the same time hold that same position. You follow me? But what I'm looking for is the depth of their understanding of their position. And oftentimes when I press it, what I hear is, well, that's what I've been taught. So that's not very deep, is it? Really what you are is, you're just a parrot. Anybody can teach you things to say. You don't own that thing. Oftentimes when you may know for yourself, and with regards to teaching theology, I may not be right about everything. I'm sure I'm not right about everything. But one thing that I've done is I've done my best to do the background work, to study, to come to the place that I believe what I believe. So I believe that the study that I did, that's not saying I'm still right, but the study that I did, I came to the conclusion that this is the right position or right stance. Sometimes there's not enough evidence for me, and I'll come to a place where someone asks me, I'll go, I just don't know yet. Now that took a long time in my life to be able to say that. When I first started pastoring 15 years ago, I wouldn't say that. I always had a belief about something that I was pretty certain about. Now I know that there wasn't enough information, at least for me, that I could gather to convince me one way or another. So oftentimes I can say, I'm really not sure yet on that. I don't know where I am on that. Well, I think this. Well, that's great. I hope you've done your work on that. I hope you're satisfied with where you are. And if you want to try to convince me, that's fine. But right now is where I'm at. I'm just not sure. And so just like an athlete seeks guidance from a coach to expand an understanding, we have to recognize that there's always something more to learn. Isn't that true? No matter what it is, no matter where you are, oftentimes, who in here has a job that you have to do continuing education? Raise your hand. Continuing education. A lot of them, right? Why is that? Because there's always something new. There's always something more. And within Wycliffe, we had something called adult learning, right? Always trying to learn more and more things. And not just learn more, but learn how to learn more. Right? Adult learning, learn how to learn as an adult. Proverbs 19:20 says this, listen to advice and accept discipline, and at the end, you will be counted among the wise. Who wants to be counted among the wise? Like I do. Like if someone says to me, wow, Jeff, one thing about him, he is wise. I've never heard anybody say that yet, but I hope one day someone will say, yeah, he's wise. He has a lot of wisdom, right? And in Africa, it's funny because cultures, of course, are all different around the world. But I look around here and see some white hair. In Africa, you're the top, like you're it, right? You are highly esteemed and highly valued in Africa. White hair, not 21-year-olds. They are not highly esteemed like here in America, right? That's who's highly esteemed and highly valued here. Like, I want to know, for what? Like, for what? They don't know anything, right? And I was there one time. They don't know anything. All they have is they have great bodies. They're in shape. They can run like the wind. But big deal. Like they have nothing to contribute to society yet, hardly, right? But they're going to get there. They're going to get there. It's okay. They have to go through that, right? And so listening to advice and accepting discipline, at the end, you will be counted among the wise. So listen to this proverb. I love this one. This is Proverbs 8:33 and 34. This is, in this passage, wisdom. How many saw the movie The Shack? Did you see the movie The Shack? You remember when he was in the cave and there was a woman there? And that was wisdom. Wisdom was personified, right? And so in this text, wisdom is personified. This is wisdom speaking. Wisdom says this, listen to my instructions and be wise. Do not disregard it. Blessed are those who listen to me, watching daily at my doors, waiting at my doorway. Now this passage and many other passages in the Bible underscore the importance of listening to wisdom. And understand, wisdom comes from all different kind of places, right? But a lot of times we know that wisdom comes from experience. Carl and I were talking one time, and this was a couple years ago. And I said to Carl, I'm finally at the place in my life. I'm 62. I was probably, I don't know, 58 or something like that then. I said, I'm finally getting to the place where I think I have something to offer, right? And it's not that a 20-year-old, like we're going to have in August, Nate's going to speak. Nate's 22 years old. It's not that he doesn't have anything to offer, right? Isn't that true? He has stuff to offer. What I mean by that is that you can know things intellectually, and that's okay. And I could teach things that I know intellectually, and someone else can too. But when you hear someone teach from experience, whole different thing, isn't it? Right? They've been through the fire, they've been through the trial, they've experienced this, and they've done it wrong. And now you're listening to their wisdom of how to get it right. And you sit and you go, wow, that's right? Like that's good stuff. That's how you know. And so all throughout the Bible, it talks about this listening to instruction. Not just listening to instruction, but actively seeking wisdom. Actively seeking it. Being open to God. Let me tell you a story. I love this story because it's so good on so many levels. This guy was telling the story about his dad, this African guy. And he said, my dad was the chief of the village. And he said, and people would come, when they had disputes, they would come, and he had this hut, and on the front of his hut had sort of like a porch, actually. We'd call it a porch. Came out like that with like a, sort of like a handrail. Not that, but you get the idea, right? And he'd sit there on his chair. And people would come and they'd sit out in front of it, and they would talk about their disputes and everything to him. And then, because they were seeking what? Wisdom. They were seeking wisdom. And so then he would go inside. But what people didn't know is inside the hut, let's say this is a window right there. Inside the hut was a little stool. And right by the window sat his wife, listening. It's true. It's true. He would say, I'm going to go inside and deliberate. He would go inside, talk to his wife. Why? Because he knew he didn't know everything. Isn't that true? Went and talked to her, sought wisdom. Then he'd come out and kind of give his, boy, he was looked at, so wise. And so seek wisdom and be open to being guided. And I think all of this, doing these things, helps promote humility. Recognize there's always something more to learn. The next thing is B in your notes is to, along with humility, it's part and parcel of it, is embrace a posture of humility and curiosity. You have to be like this when you go to a foreign land. Talk to somebody who's spent time overseas, not a vacation, not a week, not even a month, but who's lived overseas, or someone, or Maria, who's come here to America, and what the process you have to go through. You have to be humble. I remember I had difficulties in Africa in different areas. Like one was dealing with a German woman, because Germans are very, very just matter of fact to the point, and Americans, we kind of beat around the bush a little bit. But I also had difficulty with Africans then too. Like I remember I had a problem one time with the people who ran the center, this African family, Papa Charles and Mama Nellie. And Mama Nellie did some things that were not right, and I had to deal with them. And Papa Charles was away. So I went to her directly, right? Because that's what you do. The Bible says you have trouble with somebody, you go to them and you talk to them. And after I did that, the next day, you heard me talk about Rock. He's the one we bought the parts for his car. He came to my office and sat down. He said, well, first off, we had just a nice conversation and asked me how I'm doing and family and all that, for about 45 minutes before we got to the issue. And he said to me, Jeff, you don't go to another man's wife. You talk to the man. I'm like, well, why? I mean, I had a problem with her. No. That's what you do here. And so I find myself like arguing is too strong of a word, but you know what I'm saying, like trying to defend myself. Finally he said, Jeff, this is Africa. This is how you do it. And I remember thinking to myself, why am I fighting him? This is his country. This is his culture. I need to take a posture. And it's ego, right? One of the first things you do, I said, set your ego at the door. Take the posture of, and after that, it was easier for me. And I could tell you story after story about how I got it wrong in the culture. And I had to listen to Rock. And one time, this pastor would come and see us at dinner time. And we had a pyote, like a, what do you call it, Michelle? Just like a, I don't know, we call it a pyote. Anyways, where people would just sit and kind of out of the sun or whatever. And so he would come, and a guard would come knock on my door and say, Pastor Raul was here. I said, well, have him sit out there. We're eating dinner. And I'd go out there. And it happened a couple times. And finally, Rock pulled me aside one time. And after about 45 minutes, he finally got around to it. And he said, I noticed that Pastor Raul came to see you again. I said, yeah. He said, what were you doing or something? I said, we were eating dinner. He goes, oh. I go, what, Rock? He said, oh, would you not have enough food? Said something like that, and I go, what do you mean? He said, well, you could have invited him in. I'm like, yeah. Like, Americans, we tend to be more generous than hospitable. Africans are more hospitable than generous. What I mean by that is Americans would rather, oh, there's a need, okay, get out your checkbook, write a check, here you go. Africans, no, come in, let me help you, let me help take care of you. And so anyways, my point is that you have your own blind spots, you have your own ways, and it takes getting outside yourself sometimes and admit. So in a third world country, it's obvious, isn't it? It's obvious that I don't know the ways here, I don't know the customs. But the same thing happens to us here. We have ways that we think are right, and we're going to get that scripture here in a minute. Scripture says there's a way that seems right in a man's own eyes, but the end leads to death. Okay, so the next, James 1:19 says this, my dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to talk. Isn't that right? No. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. There are times in my life where I was in the opposite of all of this, right? Quick to become angry, quick to speak, and listening was not something that I even valued. I joke all the time. Sometimes we're someone's speaking to us, somebody's talking to us, and as they're talking, if you're not careful, what you're doing in your own mind is thinking about the next brilliant thing that you're going to say. Isn't that true? Right? You heard a few things, and all of a sudden your mind starts thinking about your response, what you're going to say, and all that kind of stuff. I had a friend in Missouri, and he's kind of a lot personality. He's very wise man, but I remember talking to him, and this was always so uncomfortable to me, because I would talk to him, and he would sit and just listen, just look at me, just listen. And I would finish talking, and he would sit there for a minute. And then I thought, well, this is uncomfortable, so I'd keep talking. And I'd be done again, and he'd sit there and just quiet for a minute. I go, it's hard. Silence is hard for me. Anybody else? It's kind of hard. Who's uncomfortable right now? Fill this space with some words. And so he would be sitting there because he really listened, and he had to process what I was saying so he could respond. I remember talking to him one time, and I was saying to him, he was the Africa field director, and I said, I really feel like, I might want to be like a missionary, like to Africa. I said, I don't know what it is. I said, but I don't know if it's God kind of putting that in my heart, or it's my own sense of adventure that I want to do that. He goes, I'm like, so I kept talking. I kept saying, I like the idea and stuff like that. He's kept like, talk. Finally, I had nothing else to say, so I just sat there, and he said, waited a while, he said, well, Jeff, who do you think gave you your sense of adventure? So he turned a question to me for me to think about. I go, yeah. Okay, so God put that in my heart. He can use that and kind of direct me. You follow me? But I had to get through past myself and everything, and so it's the difficult thing. Be quick to listen. C is this: cultivate a spirit of being coachable, a spirit of being teachable. Are you that? Do you have that? It's easy when you don't know. Brock's car was just broken down, and so I was away, and Pete looked at it. Pete said, Jeff, the ball joint's out. I said, okay, the ball joint's out. So I looked at it, ball joint's out. Okay, what do I do now? You know what I mean? It's easy to be teaching when you don't know anything. So I got on YouTube, you know what I mean? Oh, it's a ball joint's attached to the lower control arms. You need a lower control arm. Bought the lower control arm. Shows how to take it out. I got to take it out. I took it out. The axle came apart. Just right apart. Axle was broke. YouTube, how do you replace an axle? About the axle. Look up, the strut's bent. How do you replace a strut? It's easy, right? When you don't know anything, you got to. The trouble is when you think you know. Isn't that true? When you think you know. Especially if it's something where you see yourself as maybe quote unquote the expert. This is what I do. This is what I do for a living. That's the hard time. So I was talking to a mechanic at the club. He's a mechanic. I was telling him some different things, and then Brock's car had a problem with it when you're driving it. After I fixed it, driving it, and you put on the gas, and the car would pull as if you turned your wheel like that, your steering wheel like that. It would jerk over, but your steering wheel wouldn't move. It would just go like that, and you let off the gas, it would come back like this. So I go to him. I go, what do you think it is? Well, it's a strut. You got to replace the strut. So I replaced the strut on the other side. Drove it, still doing the same thing. Went back to him, and I told him, I said, so I went online, and I found out what it is. So I was trying to tell him what it was. He didn't want to hear anything. Why? Because he's the expert. Like, I don't know anything, right? I'm just looking at YouTube videos. And anyways, it was a loose bolt on the lower control arm that I put on. You have to put it on with a torque wrench and Loctite and all this stuff, and I didn't do that, right? So I put it on that, and now it's fine. Now it's good. But you get what I'm saying. When it's your thing, when you're the expert, it's hard to hear from somebody else. And that's what this is all about. That's really, so it's not a coachable spirit for me to not know how to fix a car and get on YouTube and have somebody teach me. When you don't know anything, you gotta seek it somewhere. It's when you think you know, and you kind of shut other people out. And this is the value of wisdom. So cultivate that thing. Proverbs 12:15, I already quoted it, but it says this: a way of a fool seems right to them. Seems right to them. But the wise listen to advice. Point 2 is this: embrace the wisdom of others. So actively, I think this is so important, and that's this: act actively now. Seek out diverse perspectives and insight. Actively do it. Just like a puzzle has all different kind of pieces to it, but they need to be put together to form a complete picture. In the same way, you don't know everything, so you kind of like putting pieces of a puzzle together. They say a good leader, a good president, doesn't have to know everything. He says put good people around him. Put them around him. So, like, for example, I don't know what kind of reading you do or whatever, but when I was in school, we would read books that supported the current position that we had in school. That's what we would read. And you would read it and you'd go, yep, yep, I believe that, yep, I believe that. Are you going to learn anything new by doing that? I don't learn anything new. And so I did something one time. This may surprise you, but I did this thing one time. I did it actually twice. It's called Atheism for Lent. So the idea was this: is I gave up Christianity for Lent. Now, when I say I gave it up, I read I read all the stuff that I read was atheists talking against Christianity. I read them. And I didn't read them to try to defend myself or whatever. I read them to listen to their criticism of Christianity. And when I did that, I remember reading it and going, I could see that. I could see that myself, And it gave me a completely different perspective. And it really taught me about myself and about how I even behave in this world. About why it is that people see Christians in a certain way, see them in a certain light. And I thought, I can imagine throughout my life how people saw me living and things that I did, things that I said, the way I behaved, and think, well, if that's following Jesus, I don't want to do that. Did you ever meet anybody like that? Like, if that's Christianity, I'm not sure I want to be part of that. That doesn't look good to me. And so it's important to not just read things that you positions that you currently agree with. Read things that are going to challenge you. At the very least, what it's going to do is going to solidify what you really believe. Isn't that true? You're going to read it and go, well, I think that's wrong. Well, why? Well, I think because of this and that, and you have to go deeper, ask yourself more questions, critical thinking, right? It'll make you stronger of your belief. But as strong as a belief that you have, no matter what it is, try to hold it with an open hand, right? Because you'll change, times will change. I can tell you story after story of people that held on to one position in their life, and then a circumstance hit their life that had to do with that belief system. You follow me? And then all of a sudden they changed how they stood on that position. Because why? Well, it became real to them, became part of their life. And so they changed. And it's a difficult thing. Proverbs 27:17 says this: as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. B is this, practice, we already talked about this, but practice active listening and empathy. I have all kind of points underneath this. I'm not going to go through them. I'm going to just read them to you. What this will do for you when you practice active listening. It's going to help. I think listening is a lost art. Some people are better at it than others. A lot of times introverts tend to be better listeners than extroverts. A lot of times. That's not always the case, but Michelle's a really, really good listener. You want someone to listen to you, go talk to Michelle. So what this will help you, it'll help you be a better communicator. If you are an active listener, help you communicate better. Why is that? Obviously, right? You're going to get more information. You're going to actively listen. You're going to get all these gaps filled in. That's going to help you communicate better. Active listening is going to help you build better relationships. It's going to help foster trust and empathy. Demonstrates how does it build relationships? Well, it demonstrates interest. It demonstrates care. It demonstrates respect for someone else. When you sit and really listen to them and pay attention to them. Stronger connections, stronger bonds between individuals. And also, too, it helps people feel like they have a safe place where they can go and they can share their feelings. So effective communication, building relationships, learning and growing, right, obviously. How about this one? How about conflict resolution? When you really listen. Sit and really listen to the other person and what they have to say in a conflict, right? Not just thinking about how to defend your own self, but listen to their side. As a matter of fact, here's a little tip. When you're in conflict with somebody and they share their feelings, a good thing to say is this: okay, here's what I hear you saying. I hear you saying da 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 da. They'll go, no, that's not what I said. Okay, I'm glad because clarify now. Right? This is active listening. This is really seeking to understand where the other person's coming from. Because oftentimes, now I can attest to this even just being in here speaking, a lot of times what I'm saying is not what you're hearing. And so know that when you're especially in conflict resolution, to actively listen and then seek to understand exactly what they're saying. A fifth thing would be this, active listening, obviously in leadership. A good leader listens to his team, listens to them, values their input, and active listening can lead to, or will lead to making more informed decisions. Right? The more information that you have, the better decisions that you're going to make. Michelle just got a new car. And so she did a lot of research on different brands, different makes, all these different kind of things, right? More information leads to a better decision. There's a lot of choices out there, and there's a lot of different factors, and so the more clarification you're getting on all these areas, the better decision. Now, not to say you're always going to make the best decision still, because we're still emotional beings, right? Like, I think Michelle bought her car because she could set her phone down and the phone charges in the car. That was a selling point. He said, you put your phone there and charge, I'll take it. No, I'm just kidding. She liked that feature though, didn't you, hon? She likes that feature. Active listening promotes personal well-being as well. The act of genuine listening, you're offering comfort to others, you're validating them, the sense of being heard. Also, it's important to do this too. It's important to engage in active listening to yourself, right? To yourself. What's the internal dialogue that you're having with yourself? Pay attention to that, because sometimes it's a negative dialogue. You need to get rid of it. You need to pay attention to what you're paying attention to, right? You need to think about, I always say this all the time, think about what you're thinking about. Sometimes I think we just think that that's just who we are. That just happens. That's just, well, I think this. Well, why? You don't have to think that way. You let yourself think that way. You never question it. Think about what you're thinking about. Proverbs 21:13 says this, whoever shuts their ears to the cry of the poor will also cry and not be answered. Right? So we pay attention to others. C is recognize the value of collective wisdom. Now that's not to say that the crowd is always right. Collective wisdom. It's not talking about the crowd. Just like you need a team of experts, right? Get a team of experts on something. They're not all going to come from the same perspective, the same place. They're going to come from different places. And so that collectiveness is going to help you. Proverbs 11:14 says this, for lack of guidance, right? It's this collective wisdom. A nation falls, but victory is won through many advisors. Seek the counsel of many people. Seek the counsel of people that you trust, not just one, but many advisors. There's safety in the counsel of many advisors. Third point is this, and this is really probably the most important part of this, and that's to apply and integrate that wisdom to your life. How do we do this? A is you spend time reflecting on the knowledge and try to reflect on the knowledge that you're hearing, the wisdom that you're hearing, and then try to discern its relevance for your life at that given time in your life. And what I mean by why I say it like that is that have you ever read a book when you were young and then read it again when you were older? And it's like different to you? You ever do that? Why? Did the book change? No, the book didn't change. You've changed. So when you listen to advice, when you listen to wisdom, try to understand it in the relevance of your current life situation. And I think, we do this all the time in different areas. We like a gardener like Gigi. Gigi has all these raised beds, and she takes time to understand and to cultivate the plants and put certain plants with certain plants. You follow me? Right? So she's gotten me into this, and one of the things they said, tomato plants, put basil around your tomato plants. It'll help keep the basil somehow, did all the research, but somehow, whether the smell or whatever, keep certain bugs off the tomato plants, right? These things eat tomato plants. And so we learn to integrate these things in our life. So we reflect on the wisdom we receive. We discern its applicability to our lives, and then we integrate it. Psalm 119:105 says this, your word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. That's what we need. We need this illumination. Next thing is this, B would be put wisdom into action through practical application. So let me tell you a story. That's from a TV show. Maybe you've heard of it. Jerry Seinfeld, everybody hear of Seinfeld? So Jerry is with Elaine, and they get out of the airport, and he rents a car, and he goes to pick up his car. And he said, Jerry Seinfeld, I have a reservation. She types it in, she goes, I see that. She goes, I'm sorry, but we don't have a car for you. He said, what, excuse me? We don't have a car for you. She said, but I have a reservation. She said, I know. And he said, that's what the reservation does. It holds the car. She goes, I know what the reservation does. He goes, I don't think you do. Because if you did, I have a car. And he said, here's what he said. He said, you know how to take the reservation. You just don't know how to hold the reservation. And the hold really is the most important part. Anybody can take a reservation, right? It's the same thing with this. Listen, you can say you're coachable. You could say, you could sit and listen to everybody and take it all in. But if you don't put it into practice, what does it mean? Zero. Absolutely nothing. James 1:22 says this, do not merely listen to the word, and I love this part, and so deceive yourself. Do what it says. Listen, I've been doing this now for almost 15 years, pastoring. Taught so much on all different kind of stuff. People have been here for years, sometimes a decade. And it's amazing to me that one thing will come up, and somebody sent me a little meme recently and said this, McDonald's can screw up your order 101 times and you'll still go back. But have the pastor screw up one time in your life and you quit the church. Right? I can't tell you how many times it's happened that I did something wrong. Sometimes I did something poorly, I admit it. Sometimes I didn't know I did anything wrong. But no one even gives me a chance to say, I'm sorry, or I didn't know I did it, or I did that bad. You with me? Friends, that's not what adults do. That's not what followers of Jesus do. Adults, followers of Jesus go, listen, the way you did, that hurt me. Really. I'm so sorry. That wasn't my intent. Right. Not even try to defend yourself, but give you the opportunity to say you're sorry. And so, actively, this is the most important part. It's the hold. It's the hold. It's the doing what it says. You can read. I can go get all the books about golf I want, all the books about swing and how to hold, your grip, your stance. I could read it all. I could read Harvey Pinnock's book, right, Jamie? I could read the whole thing, and then go out and just do my own way, do whatever I want to do. What good was it? It was no good. I do the same thing, the same way I've always done it, and that's the definition of what? Insanity. Insanity. So doing it, being humble and listening is the first part of being coachable and teachable. And doing it is the second part. And they have to go together. The last thing would be this, to humbly share the wisdom that you have with others. I think of Dean. Dean's coached his whole life. Dean got me to coach baseball one time, and I had no business coaching baseball at all. But Dean knew. He said, listen, don't worry about the baseball part. There'll be other people around to help with the baseball part. You just impart to these kids values and what it means to be part of a team. And isn't that right, Dean? Right? And that at that age, that's what they needed. There's other people, other guys, dads will be around that they played baseball. They know how to catch a grounder. I catch grounders like this. You just get. I want that ball hitting up in my face like that. I batted the same way, like this. Pitch coming in. The last thing I want to do is get hit. You don't want to mess this up. This is my life. It's my livelihood. That was the only part that wasn't a joke, Jamie. You're laughing at that. Right? So we pursue wisdom for personal growth. We recognize our limitations of our own knowledge. We humbly embrace the wisdom of others. Please acknowledge that there are diverse perspectives out there. Doesn't mean you have to agree with them. Doesn't mean you have to embrace everything. But just know there are different perspectives, just like a different culture. Isn't that right, Maria? You come to here and you have to say, well, we don't do it that way at home, but this is the way it's done here, right? And you have to adapt sometimes, right? To the place where you're not sinning in your life or anything, but know that you have to kind of adapt and adjust. Know that there's wisdom that others have to offer. Continue to be a lifelong learner. In your business, yes, but also just in life. People ask me, I was telling Jane, people ask me, what's church like? I go, I don't know, just come and see. I mean, what do you have to lose? I go, no, it's free, right? It's free. I mean, hopefully you'll hear something, at least one thing good you could take away. Meet nice people. You got nothing to lose, you know what I mean? Just to try it. And hopefully you'll learn and you'll grow. Be a lifelong learner. And try to make a positive impact in the world around you. So cultivate that spirit of humility. I think it's very, very important. And listen, this isn't for anybody else. This is for you. Isn't that a good thing about this? This is just for you. This is for you to grow into the best version of you that you can be. Learn to be coachable. Good stuff? Let's stand. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for this place that we have, a place that we have to come and meet. And thank you for all my friends that see value in this and take time out of their Sunday to come and to be with like-minded people, to learn and grow. It's testimony that they desire to be a better version of themselves. That's kind of why they're here, I believe. So God, honor that in our lives. That's, even though we may act counter to that sometimes, that's really in our heart, God. We want to be more like you in everything that we do and everything that we say. So help us to be coachable. In your name, amen, amen. Great, thanks friends, have a great day.